American geologist called William Dyer explains why he's trying to persuade the world community not to send new scientific teams deep into Antarctica, and reveals shocking new details of an expedition he participated in that he had previously kept quiet about. In 1930, Miskatonic University of Oregon sends to the Antarctica research expedition of 20 people equipped with the latest technology. They had 5 planes, 2 ships, dog sleds, and a special Peabody drilling rig that allowed them to extract soil examples from great depths. One of the 2 teams of explorers, led by biologist Professor Lake, sets up camp at the foot of the mountains and begins drilling. While scouting the area from an airplane, the scientists notice an irregularly shaped rock formation in the mountains. Soon the drillers stumble upon a cave that reveals the remains of ancient organisms. Among them, scientists find strange stones with a green pattern in the shape of a 5-pointed star. Later, in the same cave, scientists make a discovery that should change all ideas about life. They recovered from the depths something monstrous, perfectly preserved specimens of dark gray colored creatures. They had barrel-shaped bodies of unusually thick skin, webbed wings, a 5-pointed starfish-like head, and tentacles with claws. To find the rose of the expedition, a graduate student named Danforth dubbed them the Elder Things for their resemblance to creatures of myth mentioned in the Necronomicon. They found in total 14 specimens and took them to the camp. The dogs bark incessantly, smelling their acrid stench. Professor Lake performed an autopsy. The creature's tissue had no cellular structure. They had a highly developed nervous system, and instead of blood, they had a thick green slurry. They were amphibians that could swim, walk, and fly. Their body structure resembled that of mushrooms, and they reproduced by spores, like ferns. It remained unclear how they were able to evolve to such a state, if their traces are found even in the Archean sediments, when life first began. The next day, Professor Lake's group does not make contact. The second group of 10, led by William Dyer, flies by plane to their camp. On the spot, a gruesome sight appears before their eyes. All 11 men of Lake's group are dead, and their bodies are mutilated, as if they had died fighting a brutal enemy. Several bodies specimens of the creatures. Only 6 were found, and they had been buried in the snow and covered with slabs. The remaining 8 corpses of the creatures had disappeared. One man from the Lakes group, named Jedney, is missing. What they see is so startling to the explorers that they decide to censor the reports, transmitting only a brief report on the death of Lake's group to the base. Subsequently, the decision is made to fly a reconnaissance flight through the mountains. Dyer and Danforth flew, climbing to an altitude of 25,000 feet. They fly over the Mountains of Madness. Subsequent events occur, but they're just 2 of them. Dyer and Danforth see on the other side of the mountains an icy plateau and the ruins of an ancient city. They land the plane and enter the city, which consists of cyclopean structures buried under the ice for millions of years. Buildings of different geometric shapes used an unknown engineering principle, matching each other perfectly. The buildings are connected to each other in the manner of a honeycomb. The houses have many windows and cellular rooms. Instead of staircases, here used lying at an angle stone slabs with a ribbed surface. The emptiness gives the impression of an evacuation before a catastrophe. The city was already abandoned when it was still warm in Antarctica, long before humans appeared. This city is spoken of in the cult of Cthulhu and the followers of Cthulhu. On the walls of the rooms are carved bas-reliefs depicting maps of ancient paleocontinents, astronomical tables, scientific information, history of the city and its creators. The creators of the city were the Elder Things, ancient beings who arrived on Earth in the early geological period. Over the years of evolution on a distant planet, the Elder Things acquired limitless power and exceptional tissue density, allowing them to live almost anywhere. In their homeland, they exhausted the idea of a mechanistic civilization, and only in extreme cases used a technique based on an unknown principle of energy generation. The Elders first settled in the Antarctic region. They had previously done so in other planets. Mass relocations did not happen often, but only during colonizations, when the Elder Things conquered other spaces. Underwater, they created first Earth creatures. Some of their most successful creations were shoggoths, multicellular protoplasm capable of changing shape and forming organs under hypnosis. This way they obtained ideal slaves for their work. In the process of uncontrolled cellular evolution, new species of animals emerged. The elder ones built underwater mazes, megalopolises, all over the land, with the help of shoggoths, giant reptiles, and pterodactyls. For the sake of tasty meat and fun, the elder things bred a primitive mammal-like pet, which had the traits of future ape-like and humanoid creatures. The scientists read the history of the city on the walls and learn about the conflict with other species of aliens. One day, an octopus-like alien race, the star spawn of Cthulhu, invaded the Earth. As a result of the bloody war, a peace treaty was made, whereby the new lands were given to the star spawn of Cthulhu, and the oceans and land in Antarctica were left to the elder things. Later on, some of the land once again sank to the bottom, along with the ominous city of Lier, an old star spawn of Cthulhu. The elder things were once again the sole masters of the planet. In the Jurassic period, the elder ones suffered a new misfortune. A race of Migo, which combined the features of crustaceans and mushrooms with a completely different material substance, arrived from outer space. They drove the elder things out of the northern lands, and the cities of the latter were mostly concentrated in the Antarctic region. During the Tertiary period, the elder things built many cities in the Antarctic. There emerged a new species of obedient and intelligent shoggoths, who understood verbal orders. In the Permian period, the elder ones had a new enemy. These shoggoths, who increased their intelligence to a dangerous level. They learned to memorize the hypnotic orders of their masters, and thus were able to control their own form. Eventually they became uncontrollable and began to attack their former masters. After a long struggle, the elder ones managed to subdue the shoggoths by destroying the unruly with an unknown, powerful weapon that caused them to break down on the molecular and atomic levels. Finally, during the Carboniferous period, a severe cooling in the Antarctic began, forcing the elder ones to take refuge in a city at the bottom of an underground sea, warmed by geothermal springs. In the Pleistocene period, city at the spurs of the mountains was completely deserted. The carvings reflect the decline of the Elder Things civilization. They had lost the secret of creating life in interstellar flight. In the Pliocene period, the Lang Plateau formed, surrounded by a grand mountain range, even higher than the Mountain of Madness. The Elder Ones feared a nameless evil in these mountains, from which a river once brought the first piece of ice. The ice eventually destroyed the kingdom of Lamar and Hyperborea. Dyer and Danforth, advancing deep into the city, noticed sled tracks and the smell of gasoline. This leads them to think that it's the missing Jedni. Moving on, they find things from the camp, among which was a map marking the entrance to an underground tunnel near a high tower, a place of cult gatherings. Upon reaching the tower, they find the corpses of Jedni and the missing dog before the entrance to the tunnel. Dyer and Danforth realize what has happened. Professor Lake's group has been overrun by the awakened Elder Things, who find themselves buried in the cave until the humans find them. Awakened amidst the ice, the Elder Things massacred the humans and tried to study them, but returned to the city and found it abandoned. Then went another at the bottom of an underground sea. Dyer and Danforth followed that path as well. Finally, blind giant penguins appeared in the tunnel. Climbing out of the water, the scientists see 4 corpses of the Elder Things, with their heads eaten off and soiled in slime. Suddenly, in the distance, trumpeted cries, "Tekelele," are heard. The scientists run back, seeing the Shoggoth awake from hibernation. The explorers miraculously escaped, as the Shoggoth turned into the wrong tunnel at the crossroads. It became clear to them that in the past, the Shoggoths rebelled again and destroyed the Elder Things, and then they took up residence in their underwater city. After reaching the plain, Dyer and Danforth fly back to the expedition base in McMurdoch Strait, agreeing to keep quiet about what happened. During the flight, Danforth sees something in the sky, which causes him to have a nervous breakdown and temporarily go insane, as he screams. The Black Pit, the Craven Rim, the Proto-Shoggoths, the windowless solids with 5 dimensions, the nameless cylinder, the Elder Pharaohs, Yog-Sothoth, the primal white jelly, the color out of space, the wing, This is where William Dyer's story ends. He tries to dissuade other scientists from expeditions so that they do not disturb the Shoggoths, who treat all mankind